Carter stand for the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Babalani?
Here.
Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here. Approval of the regular meeting minutes for December 5th. One correction. Under request to purchase property, I voted no against that, not. $16,238. Is there any other additions or corrections?
I make a motion, we approve the regular meeting notes for December 5th with Doc's correction, the closed session meeting notes from December 5th, 2016, and the special meeting notes for December 9th, 2016.
Support.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Manifest 2016-23 in the amount of $248,586.92. Mr. Pop, any questions?
I have none either.
Mr. Babalani?
Yeah, I got a couple, Doc. Page 3. On the Parks and Recs, we had two separate invoices for $446.25 and $444.50 for air compressor rental. I would like to see the manager get some pricing on purchasing one, because I think if we're doing this every year, we should have bought one a long time ago.
The golf course never purchased one, have they? Well, their system, that was too expensive. This is something that's more than that.
I have to check to see exactly what activity he was blowing up. He was winterizing.
Because I brought that up with the golf course in years past, and they said it's too expensive, and they only do it once a year, so they rented it, but I'm not sure if this is something.
Yeah, that's a much larger compressor than they ended up
Okay.
having to deal with.
I would think we'd have a small compressor.
Probably not anything big enough, but that
Not for that.
compressor's probably $3,500. And if we're spending $900 a year.
I'll double check on that.
Page 5, under the purchase power, I see we're down to 28,000. Is everything running down at the hydro?
Everything is in operational condition at this point.
That's all I have.
Mr. Menegini?
Yeah, Mark covered everything I had, except I got one other question here. We seem to be losing a little ground on our charge card fees, Mary. See, it's usually $80, $90 a month, and all of a sudden it's a little over $100 a month. Maybe we can look into it and charge more for those that are using the charge cards. I know at one time it was almost $8,000 a year, and we've chopped that way down. That's all I have.
Does, Mary, on anything, from the golf course does not show up on that system, right?
No,
through our charge system?
nothing goes through the city anymore.
Okay.
I didn't have a question, but just a comment. I guess I'm amazed that we add poisonous chemicals to our wastewater to make them better. Hope the city never adds chlorine to their drinking water. We need a motion to approve the manifest.
I'll make
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest number 2016-23 in the amount of $248,586.92.
Support.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Is there anybody in the audience like to address the council on any agenda items? Otherwise, we'll have time for comments at the end of the meeting on any topic. Next is ordinance 425 and 426, water and sewer ordinance amendments. Mr. Anderson?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple meetings ago, I brought these two new ordinances up for council for first reading. Again, as I pointed out in our charter, most new language, current language for ordinance involve multiple readings to allow for time for awareness. And so even though it's not in our charter to do that, I do bring these up, especially brand new ordinances like we have, or these major amendments like we have for the water and the sewer system, bringing them up for awareness and further communication. Tonight would be considered a second reading under presentation, and we did have a chance to meet with staff, with Attorney Steve Tinty, who, if you remember back a year or so ago, we contracted with Steve to handle our RD projects, and as part of that, to review the ordinance. There are a number of areas within both the water and sewer ordinance that needed to be updated. I thought we had a good meeting the other day. We went through and had some further revisions, which will be coming out, but that was just a couple days ago, so still waiting on the markup on that. But the major parts of the ordinance still are intact. I tried to, within this report, give you a real brief update, and of course Mr. Tinty's letter gives you a brief update as to what within the ordinance we're requesting consideration for. So at this point, council has any questions, or if they have any questions for Mr. Tinty, he's here tonight to answer those questions.
There was a mention about people who violate this ordinance and possible payment for costs and fines, but there was no fines listed, I don't believe. Would that have to be addressed in this?
The ordinances as drafted have enforcement provisions. The provisions basically allow for the cost of prosecutions to be imposed. I believe we also have the traditional misdemeanor sanctions, which would be generally incarceration up to 90 days with an appropriate fine of up to $1,000. That would be in addition to the expenses that the city would incur in enforcing or rectifying violations to either ordinance.
Thank you, but so it's just the misdemeanor up to $1,000 would be the fine. Any other questions from any council members? Anybody?
Couple of points. I'm going to just go ahead and just so, because the second reading, just so we're aware, the current sewer ordinance has actually been intact since the late 70s, to 78, 79, with some minor, if any, revisions. But there is a mandatory hookup provision within the existing ordinance. This one just makes it add some clarity to it. It's when you're within a distance from the system, current system. One of the things we did do in this ordinance is also provide for a certification to, if somebody, a certificate, if you're exemption certificate, if you can't for some reason hook up and it's a reasonable reason to not hook up. We talked about again in the sewer, we talked about the laterals, ownership of the laterals and where they started. We wanted to clarify where the private ownership was and where the public ownership is on a sewer lateral. I think that was a major part of the sewer ordinance. In the water side, we had very little language in our water ordinances, and so one of the things we did was we implemented common provision that today is the mandatory hookup. There was nothing in the current ordinance for that, and it again involves a waiver certificate or exemption certificate process. We talked about meter charges and reconnects, something that the council should evaluate, and we talked about replacement language for your service lines, because especially in light of what happened in Flint, there was a number of problems with there on the service line side, mainly coming from the shut-off back to the house. I think that's something that we wanted to at least investigate in our ordinance for when we come through with a project, to try and help people to get their, if they have galvanized lines, get the lines replaced all the way up through the house. And we did have some hydrant rental language, which we didn't have in our current ordinance. So I think that's something that both these ordinances are just bringing up to current standards, something that we've needed for quite a few years. That's all I have.
Mr. Carlson, do you have any comment?
Nothing beyond echoing Mr. Clinty's commentary regarding that there are penalties in place, civilly and up to criminal sanctions for violation of the ordinances. Read through it this weekend, and as usual, Steve looked to be thorough in his presentation on the ordinances. Had a lot of information, common sense things that current ordinances are lacking, and I think it will be a nice addition to help the city in enforcing some of the sewer and water issues moving forward.
Grant, I have a question for you. I noticed they've mentioned it in the past that during heavy rainfall, of course, Strawberry Lake goes up and the pump and Yargon shaft can't handle it, and the water table rises in a lot of places in town, and they claim that our sewer usage goes up. So that tells you that people who have this issue are pumping into their sewers instead of pumping it back outside because the water has come up. Is the city any way, how, shape, or form responsible for that because they're letting the lake get too high, which controls the groundwater? Because if those pumps shut down, the whole town is gonna flood. Main Street, the basement of Main Street will flood eventually. And I mean, this all goes back to the mines when they sunk all their shafts and ran across all this water and took off and let it come up. Now they've got those two pumps over there in the Argonne shaft running continuously. Now, is that my problem because I get a foot of water in my basement, or is that somehow responsible for the city for not keeping up on it enough? Because I understand there's complaints that the docks over there, the fishing docks, well, the water gets too low for the fishing docks. I don't understand why that's a big concern. If I'm over here someplace and you're over there and your basement's flooding because they're concerned about the water at the dock level. Is that a good question?
Trying to ferret out your question, Councilman Menegini. You know, generally speaking, I guess I could argue that it's not the city that's flooding the basements, it's the rain and Mother Nature that's
But they
bringing heavy
control the
rains.
water level. They control the water table.
I guess suggesting that the city controls the water table, maybe is wishful thinking to some extent. I think that they're trying to do everything they can to prevent some of these issues happening by having these pumps in place, and trying to prevent it from happening in the first place. So I think trying to control Mother Nature is something the city maybe and men in general have tried to do, men and women in general have tried to do for a long time. But I think the city does the best job they can of trying to prevent some of those occurrences from taking place. And I think sometimes even with the best efforts and best of intentions, it can't always be controlled. It sounds like from concerns or complaints you've received in the past.
I was wondering if somehow maybe there could be an exemption for that. Because I mean, all you're doing is pumping it out in the yard and it's coming right back in. I don't know how many places there are, but I know that whole end of town has that issue every big storm.
I will comment that the city has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years to maintain the pumps and to put in efficient pumps, so it's a continual cost.
Yeah, it's not cheap to run them pumps, I know that.
So you were asking whether there should be an exemption to allow for groundwater to be
One
pumped
possibility, yeah.
in the
that's-
sewer?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe Mr. Tinty could give us his.
Well, I think you have to make the distinction. The city of Norway has governmental immunity for all acts unless the legislature has waived them. The legislature has waived liability with respect to sewer backups. And there's specific legislation that has been on the books, going back for, the Detroit floods, Husky is the name of the case, probably 15 years. So ultimately, the city of Norway enjoys governmental immunity on the issue. It doesn't necessarily mean that the city wouldn't want to be cognizant and undertake actions to minimize those activities, but that's what you really get. If you're looking to make a waiver in your sewer ordinance to allow pumping, you need to identify the individuals, the locations that need it, and to address it on a case-by-case basis. Because otherwise, you will have everybody pumping into your downspouts will be connected, everything else will be, and then you will have massive amounts of additional wastewater in which to process. I mean, we can build a case-by-case if we think that that's something that there are individuals in need of that option, we can build it in.
Well, I know for a fact that in one place, down in that general area, from the original floor, the water came up 17 inches. Now, that's a lot of water in a basement, 17 inches. And that was because of groundwater.
Right, so you're
No
talking,
ifs, ands, or buts about it.
you're talking groundwater as opposed to wastewater.
Right, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It's actual water table is what it is. And at one time, I had the water tested when I used to live in that area. And it's that water, it's not water coming from the swamp, because it was tested, and it's the mine water.
Right, and in our ordinance, it prohibits the connecting of
Downspouts,
downspouts.
yeah, I saw that,
And
yes.
stormwater into the system. So they're asking, in that case, you're pulling your water out of your basement, throwing it on your yard, and it comes coming back down into the groundwater. And
You could probably come up with an option there, and that would be by permit or application to a specific locale or user.
On a case-to-case basis without setting precedent.
Now, is this considered a second reading then, and we'll vote on it at the next meeting?
the next time it comes up, yes, it will have for council consideration. I'm not sure if it'll be in the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It all depends on, you know, going back through the last review, there were a number of things that we had to look at, some newer language, so we'll let you know.
This is not an open session, but does anybody in the audience have any questions? Now, we need to go on to agenda item 7, unless there's other questions. Anybody else on the council have any questions on this or concerns?
Well, I guess I got one. I agree with Mr. Tinty. I think that we need to try to keep as much of that out of the system as possible, because we spent a lot of money getting the storm water from the main street out of the system, and the treatment costs will kill us. And when the treatment costs kill us, it affects everybody's rates for sewer. So I think that we need to keep this out of the system.
Is there any storm sewers over on this side of town?
We separated the storm
So
on this side.
So people could technically pump their water into the storm sewer?
The storm on this side of town would end up in White Creek.
Right.
Yeah.
So technically, if people are having problems, rather than making an exemption, we could have them just pump their water
If they have
into-
access to it, yeah.
to the storm sewer.
Yeah, I just think it's gonna affect everybody's rates if we start dumping this stuff in, and it's a massive amount. And I don't think we need to go there.
But particularly over here, the ground table does go into White Creek, forms part of the mirror.
Well, I mean, if we have to, then we need to lower the level of the pumps.
We'll take another look at how that works.
Is there any other questions? Now we'll go on to agenda item 7, appointments and presentations for the Downtown Development Authority. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, we have, each year, at this point in time, we handle our appointments and presentations for all of our boards and committees. We've run a month and a half to 2 months of ads for interested individuals to apply for our various boards. We have the DDA, Downtown Development Authority, the Parks and Rec Committee, the Jake Mangini Museum, our Board of Tax Review, and of course, our Norway Area Planning Commission. I'll take them, if you want, I can just run through them one by one and go through them. Okay, the first one is our DDA, or our Downtown Development Authority. We had 2 positions open, 2 members that put in for reappointment. That was Steve Ortman and Donna Hayes. We also received 2 additional applications, one from Chris Godstein and the other from Mary Skog. So we had 4 applicants and 2 positions. Again, it was Steve Ortman and Donna Hayes are requested for reappointment. So it's up to council if they want to reappoint Mr. Ortman and Ms. Hayes.
I think they've done a good job, not to say that the newcomers wouldn't, but I see the newcomers are on another board selection just down from this one here.
The only thing I see is I don't, it's not against Mayor Hayes, but I don't like to see a couple on the same board, in the same household. And that's your wife, Donna? That's, yeah. And it's not against her, I just don't like to see a married couple on the same board.
Well, I know we have a hard time getting people to apply for these boards. And as far as I'm concerned, if somebody's qualified and they apply for it new, I would rather see them on there than somebody that's been there already. Not saying they're not doing a good job by any means, but I'm for the 2 new people that have applied.
Is there like a conflicting there, Ray, because it's the same, it's a DDA Citizens Council?
Well, there has to be either live or have a business interest within the district or be an employee of a business interest in the district. So the DDA is the hardest to have membership because of the requirements. Just a point of interest, Donna was on the board and then Doc was on because of mayor.
Yeah.
It says right in that the mayor sits ex officio, so.
Yeah, I just don't like it because I'm not saying it would, but it could persuade vote,
But it's council's prerogative on how they want to make the appointments.
I was just thinking that, if you put, you would have on the DDA, on the regular DDA for the business side and the DDA area citizens, you would have 2 of the same members.
Yeah, what we're gonna have is that citizen committee that's coming up, that's a very specific, one-time board. It's gonna be non-existent after, the updated plan goes through. So this is the actual board, and then that one is just a special board for that specific activity. And I'll go through that when we get to that too.
How are you gonna handle this? Somebody make a motion and then a support?
Somebody has to make a motion.
Motion and support, yeah.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we accept the reappointment of Steve Ortman
You
and
take them separately. You're supposed to.
Grant, take them separately.
I think that's the easiest thing to do because
Okay.
of the 2 folks.
I make a motion, we approve the reappointment of Steve Ortman to the DDA.
I'll support that.
Mr. Menegini?
No?
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes. That's one position, someone has to make a motion on another individual.
I make a motion to nominate Donna Hayes.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
No.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Abstain?
Mr. Menigini?
No.
2-2, it does not pass.
I make a motion to nominate Mrs. Skog.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Babalani?
Sure. Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
And next is the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Okay, on this one, should be easier. We have two reappointments, Terry Spence and Daryl Harder. We actually have two open positions as well. And we received an interest today from Bo Anderson. So one of the two open positions would then be filled. So we actually have three individuals for 4 seats. So obviously, we're recommending to have the 3 individuals approved.
You have one open seat, yeah?
But it's Bo
Yeah, what's
Anderson?
that
I
one
thought it
of-
was Ben Anderson when I first reading that.
Yeah,
That's Bo.
It's
Okay.
Bo, yeah.
You want to do them separately, or you can do them all together, right? Because there's no conflicting voting?
I would think they could all be done at one time.
I think, but if somebody has an objection to it, if somebody has an objection, say, to one of the individuals wants to vote no against them, I think I know it's easier to go as a group, guys and girls, but probably better just to separate them out, just in case somebody has an objection to somebody.
Be like in a consent agenda, I guess. If it's a unanimous, then you could do them all together.
Could do that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a vote no would be,
you separate them out.
yeah.
I make a motion, we approve Terry Spence, Daryl Harder, and Bo Anderson for the Parks and Recs Committee, 3-year terms expiring January 2020.
Support.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
I'm only gonna vote no because it was put together. I believe that you're supposed to do them separately, so I do agree with them, but I don't agree with the motion of all 3 together.
Okay.
I think we should pull them separate then.
If you're going to vote no, then we'll have to start
Let's
over
go
again.
separate.
So would you make a motion for one individual, or?
I make a motion, we approve Terry Spence for the Parks and Recs Committee.
Support.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
I'll make a motion, we support Daryl Harder for the Park and Recs.
Support.
Babalani, you supported?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Babalani?
Yes. I make a motion, we approve Bo Anderson for the Parks and Recs Committee.
Support?
With a 3-year term expiring 2020 January.
Support?
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
For the Jake Mangini Museum appointments, there are 3 open seats. 2 of the 3 current sitting members have asked for reappointment. That's William Trombley and Doug Lindsley. Mr. Lynch has decided not to be reappointed, so there will be 1 open seat. So there's two positions, or 2 individuals for 3 seats.
I'll make a motion that William Trombley and Doug Lindsley be reappointed for 3-year terms expiring in January of 2020.
Please limit it to 1 person. Mr. Menigini, please limit your motion to 1 person.
Oh, 1 person, okay. That William Trombley be reappointed for 3-year term.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes,
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
I make a motion, we approve Doug Lindsley for a 3-year term expiring January 2020 to the Jake Mangini Museum Committee.
Support.
Vote, which one supported Pop and Brew?
Yeah.
One of you.
Surprises.
Mrs. Brew?
yes,
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Next is the board tax review.
We have 3 individuals for 3 seats, Mr. Ron Vivio, Mr. Darrell Harder, and Mr. George Servia. This is a 1-year appointment, so each year, this board gets reappointed.
I'd like to make a motion.
Make a motion that we appoint George Servia for the Board of Tax Review.
Support.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
yes. I make a motion to nominate Ron Vivio for Board of Tax Review.
Support.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes,
Mr. Babalani?
Yes. I make a motion, we approve Darrell Harder for a reappointment, 2017 Board of Tax Review.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
yes,
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes. The Norway Area Planning Commission.
For this year, the city has 1 appointment to make for the Planning Commission. Ms. Mary Skog has put in for that position, and that's the only application received, so we recommend appointment.
I make a motion, we approve Mary Skog to be accepted onto the Norway Area Planning Commission.
support,
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
yes,
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Next, number 12, Resolution 2016-29, Development Area Citizens Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I go into this, I just want to thank everyone who's put in for our boards and committees. I think that, I would encourage anyone to put in, to get involved, and I just want to remind everybody we have 2 open seats, one for the museum and one for the Parks and Recreation. So at any time, get your application in, we'll get you on the board and get you involved. Okay, the Development Area Citizens Council is required by law for the Downtown Development Authority to update its tax income and finance plan. This past year, we've been reviewing the legislation on how to extend the time frame for the DDA. The DDA was put together in 1994, officially approved in 1994 under a 30-year charter, and that charter comes up in 2024. The DDA would like consideration or to move forward with a new term, and in order to do that, because we have over 100 residents that live within the DDA, the citizen council needs to be developed. This is primarily or strictly residential that live in the district, and they're going to be charged with reviewing the plan, helping put together the plan update, and then when we bring it to council for final approval. So there are, under the resolution, there are 9 individuals that were required to sit on this board. There are 9 applications, and as you saw with all the other appointments, it's not an easy task to find 9 individuals that would be willing to serve. So I, again, thank each one of these individuals immensely for going through this process. The 9 individuals are Chris Gottstein, Mary Skog, John Beck, Barb Thorne, Darrell Finley, Rico Mangini, Brett By, David Kivisari, and Lee Mangini.
I got a couple questions, Ray, on
Sure.
that zoning map, or for the DDA map. I know we probably covered this, me and you, but I need a refresher on why the subdivision where Lee is at is in the DDA.
The district predates me of when they put it together. It has been in the district since the beginning. I believe that the areas, there were a couple areas north of the highway that were viewed as potential commercial, and so they were added to the district. There was also an amendment, and Bruce, I don't know if you remember back to how the lines were formed in the district.
I wasn't involved in either, really. You know, back home, you know, for all we worked with the DDA, I was not on the DDA when that happened. So I don't really have any history.
It was an empty area at the time, and we thought that the DEDA could help provide the sewer extension, road extension without necessarily tapping into city funds. So that's, I believe anyway, was why that was included.
As far as I know, Doc, that was DDA money that bought that and did all that. I mean,
Well, the city-
they traded land somehow to get the
Right.
property, but then it was the DDA that got the money, put up the money for the water and the sewer.
It was
everything else.
Keweenaw land that was
Right.
purchased from Keweenaw for $1, I believe. in which we
I
got-
thought they had traded some.
And
The
we
story
got-
I got was they traded some property
No,
someplace for that chunk.
Pretty sure it was all part of the Keweenaw land.
It was
which
Keweenaw,
includes-
right, yeah.
Which includes the mine pits and the bat caves and all the other land up on top of the hill. That was part of it. And,
But the DDA is capturing money from there.
Right.
That I know.
and that's where a lot of the money from the DDA comes from, is the houses there, because any new construction money goes into the DDA rather than into the coffers. But again, it was DDA money that I believe put the water, sewer, and pavement in there.
Is there any benefit, Ray, to getting that out of the DDA system and getting it into the regular residential?
No, and the main reason is because we capture on county tax. So if
Okay,
you
we
take it out,
capture
then
it all.
you capture the county tax or a
Okay.
portion of the county tax.
Okay.
So that's the reason why the DDA district's very important, the way it was developed at the time. Under new TIFAs, there's an opt-out language, and so, you know, these older TIFAs actually have quite an advantage because we end up capturing the monies and putting it into the district as opposed to having it go out into the general fund and other areas.
So would it be beneficial for us to adopt extra parcels into that system? Or we really can't, like Kimberly
No.
Road, that could be commercial on the backside of the mirror?
It's my understanding, and we'd have to get a legal opinion on this, but I think we reviewed it with legal counsel, like Miller Canfield, that extending the term would not change how the capture takes place. If we increase the size of the district, and change the size of the district, that the new district or the new area would fall under the new provisions, which means the only capture would be from the city. It wouldn't be from the county. I mean, you could potentially, but they would opt out. They would all opt out. So there would be no financial advantage to do that.
Okay, the street projects that were done up that way, that's in the DDA then, right? It's right on the edge of the DDA?
It's on the edge. Yeah,
Is it in the DDA or
I'd
not?
have to look at the map. You're talking about scenic?
Yeah, because I was looking at that, and if that was in the DDA, then the DDA should have funded some of that project if it was in that area, because that is their area.
What project you talking about?
Scenic.
Drive. The lower
By
one.
looking at the map is,
Yeah, it's in the DDA district.
well, then how come the DDA didn't fund that part of the project?
I don't-
Because we didn't ask them, because I think you specifically wanted to make sure that that road was paved. And
Yes, I
we-
did.
And I think we all agreed with it, and then we went forward with using the funds from
Yep.
the, from the electric department.
That wasn't, remember, that wasn't under the original plan.
Yes, I understand that, but
Right,
how
and-
come it wasn't brought into the fact that we could have possibly, while they were paving, approached the DDA for the funding? And we could have did
I think
another
it was because of
project.
the timing.
The timing?
I think it was a timing, it was so quick that we didn't bring the DDA on board at that point.
It was last minute, we had extra
Yeah,
funds.
I know it was last minute, but I just thought that, you know, if it, then it very well could have went to DDA if we would have had time.
If we had time, we could have.
That last stretch that needs to be done behind the Norway Spring, I'm assuming that's in the DDA?
That is in the DDA, yes.
Then maybe with this next project, we need to approach the DDA for next summer and get the rest of that road done?
Sure. Yeah.
It's
We bring it
not that bad a shape, though. the
Oh,
part
yeah, it
that-
is. There's a culvert right by the Norway Spring that needs to be changed, and that last stretch, we put down a super patch there from Valley View to right behind the spring. That was all super patch. That's in bad shape. That culvert has a big rust hole, good-sized rust hole in it, and it's a major culvert. Truck route on that side, I would be surprised if that culvert held up much longer.
Well, let's proceed with the DDA Area Citizens Council. Is there a motion? Are you willing to accept all the names in one motion?
Yeah.
Well, it's in the resolution, it's required.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2016-29.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Next, Resolution 2016-30, amendments to the Dickinson County Solid Waste Management Plan. Mr. Anderson?
Well, this is something that's gone back and forth between the county Solid Waste Management Committee. We were asked this past year on the committee members to review the countywide solid waste management plan in light with some discussions that we had for the Solid Waste Management Authority. We looked at making some amendments to the plan, mainly to allow for some competition or some alternative contracting opportunities at the transfer station. There was some old language within that solid waste management plan, and so that's what started the process. After a lot of back and forth, we went to the county. The county accepted a portion of it, sent it back, and now all of the jurisdictions need to vote on the amendment. The amendment is provided for you, along with a letter from QPAD for your review and approval.
Is there any questions from the council?
I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2016-30.
Support.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Next on the agenda is city council meeting schedule. I would propose that for January, we have the second and fourth Monday, and for September, the Tuesday instead of the Monday. Is there any discussion on this?
I make a motion, we approve the 2017 City Council meeting schedule with Dr. Hayes's changes.
Support.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Next is the truck route exemption from ordinance 412 concerning Mr. Gustafson. I know there's some discussion on this. Would someone like to make a suggestion for this?
I guess I would like to make a suggestion. I would like to see the ordinance go through,
Well,
or
the
excuse me,
exemption.
the amendment, or the exception to the ordinance of 412, but I would like to see in there that it's stated that the truck is to be unloaded and the same route for entering his residence isn't used to exit his residence. And if it was violated in due process, that the exemption is, can be revoked.
Is that your motion?
I'll make that a motion if nobody else has any questions.
Any discussion on this or support for that?
Support.
Can you say that again, Mark?
I would like to see the exemption for ordinance for Mr. Gustafson for the 412 numbered ordinance be granted with the stipulation that the truck is empty and that the entrance and exit route are not the same on Scenic.
And you said if he violates this,
And if he violates it in due process, that the exception can be revoked.
and you seconded that?
Yes.
So you're saying you can't do a U-turn, bottom line?
Bottom line, yes.
I think that's what we had mentioned the last time. And I've noticed you going in and out of there and you're doing it properly.
Okay, Mr. Menegini?
Yes?
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes. Item 16 is withdrawn from the agenda, so that's the end of our meeting tonight. Does anybody in the audience like to address the council on any issue? Anybody? Do we need an update from Mr. Hawkinson?
Real quick one, I think it was gonna come anyway, but, I'm looking up there. Press presentation. This has a short life, like tomorrow. Yeah, most of you probably know, I think, that, we're gonna be doing loan closing on all three projects on December 29th. That word got out, everybody. I'm not gonna steal any thunder from your comments, because you're gonna make some. But that's a good thing. He's got a couple comments he wants to make relative to that, number-wise. But there was a lot of effort put into it by a lot of people, and we got it done. We, everybody, and city staff worked very hard, Steve, so on. But, so that's what's happening. So that's all that's happening. We're gonna close those loans on the 29th. Contracts have all been signed. They're on their way to downstate rural development for signature. Contractors have indicated they're not interested in doing anything during the winter, so we won't be issuing a notice to proceed till sometime in the spring. That's when the clock will start. Depending on that date, the water sewer project will be, the completion date is actually days from the notice to proceed. It's 180, so it's really set up to be a this construction season project. Baco has indicated that that's what they plan to do. They're gonna be entering with 2 mainline crews to start with, and then very shortly thereafter, a service lateral crew and a grading crew. On the wastewater treatment plant, the completion dates were longer than that, but Gunlack has indicated their goal is going to be, at least going in, is to have that project concluded by national holiday of November 15th, or fall. I hope to get it all done. We'll see how that goes. So we're gonna be kind of on hold. We'll have pre-construction meetings in the spring, I'll say, or whenever, and certainly we'll let you know about that if you want to attend. And then we'll be off tearing up the town. We are gonna have, Ray and I have talked about this, in the spring. We want to have a public meeting. We want to invite all the people that are going to be affected out on the streets, have a very candid conversation with them about how inconvenient it's going to be, and not, not gloss over that, and let them know what to expect. So, I don't know if you have any specific questions. That's kind of where we're at.
And your comments beforehand, that because we're completing this before the first of the year, we're gonna save $1.2 million or something.
I had them dig up the figures, Doc. The total is $1,635,000 by locking in
Over 40
now,
years.
over 40 years. But that's still roughly 20, 30, 40, a little over $40,000 a year. Because they knuckle down and everybody stepped to the plate, including Brenda Stevenson, who works for Rural Development, and Mary and Ray.
Everybody was.
That's a chunk.
So it turned out well. I wasn't real optimistic about it. Didn't want to be, but it's turning out really well that we're doing this. So.
Thank you.
I almost forgot. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Good New Year. We won't be meeting again until the 9th. I will tell you that I am working with Mary to put together a package for that meeting. I will not be here. You'll have closed. So once you close, then no bills are paid before we go through the same process we went through for the stuff, the paper you guys had to approve getting reimbursed. Now what happens after you close is that any payments have to come to you, be approved, sent to RD. RD sends you the money, then you've got the checks. And so you've got a fairly large bill from the newspaper. Having those bond ordinances in there was $2,600 times 3, right? Pricey. And of course, it didn't happen in time to get it in the initial package. And to come back like tonight with another initial package, money's been ordered, all the paperwork's been set up for the bills that were in there. So we're gonna have a package together on the 9th, and Mary's gonna take care of submitting that to RD in my absence. Get that money, so you'll see that on the 9th. There's gonna be those bills. There's a couple invoices from Mead and Hunt, and there's an invoice from Steve Tinty. It'll be on that list. So, any other questions?
Was that all in the budget?
Yes?
The advertising?
Yes. Yes, it was a dart. Yeah, we're covered in the admin section. Yeah. Yep. Anything else?
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
November 15th is a state holiday, not a national holiday.
Oh, that's right. Actually, it's a UP holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that was the first day of school. Okay, thanks. Everybody have a nice holiday.
Mr. Managhini, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I see in our executive memo here that where I got it here someplace, that our funding came through for the Strawberry Lake Recreation. Included in that is completely redoing the whole path. Now, this is how many years, 4 or 5 years in a row that we put an application in for it?
It's the third year, I believe.
Third year? Okay, I'm not gonna argue with you. But it's always been shot down, we've always been close, and now we finally made it. Maybe we can thank Mr. Trump, I don't know.
I don't think you can.
But it's gonna be nice to finally get that done. There's gonna be the 20% in-kind funding on that. I mean, we can do that in kind, but is that part of the 280 or is that on top of the 280 of the grant itself? There are some odd dollars there.
That's on top. We have roughly half of that, well, $50,000 of in-kind. And then we had a resolution that we passed back in April, which we had to commit to $50,000 in cash. So it's roughly $100,000 in in-kind.
Okay, well, that's good news. I'm sure that'll make a lot of people happy getting that path straightened out. And the only other thing I have, and Ray, I hope you can answer this, what effect, if any, will this new energy bill passed by our legislature have on us. I understand that, and I could be wrong, I understand that Casperson and McBroom voted against it.
From what I understand, there were concerns because they did not have specific language for the transmission line from the Lower Peninsula to the Upper Peninsula. I think that was their major issue. As far as the rest of the bill, it's pretty complex. There was a large section that we were scrambling around the last day because they had a Senate bill that came out, which we fully vetted, and it was actually pretty good for municipal electrics. And then the House rewrote the section and came out with a new House bill, revised House bill, the night before. The next morning, we ended up getting it, and they were voting on it at 1 o'clock. So we had a half a day to.
Yeah, they had referred to an all-night session.
Yeah. And so, as it turns out, I didn't get a final post-op on that, so to speak. But what I do understand is that we're, again, in pretty good shape. Some of the major components is that in the energy efficiency, or EO portion, we like to call it, that it actually sunsets in 2021. Some of the other provisions that would affect other utilities more than us would be the renewable. You know, went from 10 to 15, and then there's an objective by 2025 to be at 25%. Well, we're 70%. So, you know, it doesn't affect us whatsoever. May affect us in our renewable energy credits that we get, that we sell. But outside of that, we're in pretty good shape.
Speaking of which, on the renewable credits, I haven't seen anything on that for a while. Are we kind of
Well,
snowballing them, waiting, or?
No, one of the reasons is that I've been trying to get up to speed on how to sell those. You look at the market, you look at who's interested in buying, and actually, I'm working with someone right now to sell some credits. So,
I think the last time we sold some, it was like $31,000, $32,000. It
yeah,
was a pretty good.
and it won't be
That was
as much,
at
but
least a
you know,
year
they run out in 3 years, and I think we're in pretty good shape. WPPI helps us out a lot with our energy, or with our renewable credits.
Okay, that's all I have.
I got a couple, Doc. I noticed we didn't have a cable report in our packet or a code enforcement report for either.
I messed up on the cable. I had it on my desk, and I thought I had it in the packet, so I do have that
Okay,
one.
we didn't receive one on the other one.
Nope.
Automated meters, did you hear anything? You were gonna check and see what the availability is, when we would be receiving them?
I did get an email, and they're in the manufacturing at this point, so that's good news.
Any date?
I think we're talking 2 months, aren't we?
They send out like some test ones from us to test, and that was like early January, and then I think it was a month after that.
Month after that,
they
yeah.
approved the test ones.
Okay, I'd like to see if there's no snow plowing to be done. I'd like to see us stay on top of the trees on the boulevards that are dead, so we don't get behind and we gotta hire Asplin again. Update on the water building that I suggested, we talked about for the spring. I'd like to see us get some numbers together. I would like to be involved with the project if possible, on the design, what we were gonna be doing, if that's possible. I'd like to see us get the numbers so we can make a decision if we're gonna go with it, or what we're gonna do with that. The Muir property for the parking area that I talked about last time, I think if the DDA is looking at property swap and it's not in their district, I think the council needs to have the final say-so, that there's no promises made. If that is not DDA property, that's not in their jurisdiction. Because it is gonna affect the taxpayers. I noticed in the police report, it looks like they stepped it up. Last year in November, they had, what was it? 7 traffic citations, and this year they had 28. So I'm happy to see that they stepped it up a little bit. That's all I got.
Mrs. Brew?
I also had a question on the energy bill, but he already answered that. And then, I just wanted to thank everybody who worked so hard on getting that loan closed. I also realized that too, getting that done before the first of the year saved us quite a bit of money, and I appreciate everybody who worked so hard on that. And, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Mr. Pop?
Ray, I don't know if you talked to Baco or not about before we got the snow and the frost on the ground, about them coming back and looking at Curry Road where the edges, if they're coming back in the spring or not, because when I went up there before we got the frost there, that was pretty bad. That was a horrible job that they did, and it was a rush job. I'm not happy with the way that road ended up. You know, we spent a lot of money and they did not do a good job at all. So are they coming back in the spring? I know you had talked to them, you had to go up there and look at that road, and there was something else going on up there.
They will come back, and, I mean, they've got warranty.
Because I've heard from the city employees too, that, you know, it's gonna be a mess, it's gonna be bad.
Yeah. We did talk to them about that.
Okay. Just
They'll
wanted
be,
to-
and they'll be in town next year too, so I'm sure over the course
They
of the
could
year.
just do whatever
able
they
to
gotta
work
do
with
to,
Yeah.
to pack it in, or whatever they gotta do, bring the gravel in. And I'd also like to too, thank everyone for helping out with that loan project, and wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and a safe one.
Doc, I have one more question. Mary, I was gonna ask you too, I had got a phone call. Are we having trouble with the billing again this month? Did they come out later, or, and then they said on there they were due at a different time?
We had a couple problems, and it wasn't like all of the bills. It
Uh-huh.
was the people that get multiple bills. There's 2 that I know of that get a packet of bills, and they had a due date of December 25th, which obviously, but I'm not aware of any other problems.
Okay,
So if you know of something specific, let me know.
okay,
That was just, and we don't know why that happened. We put in a call and asked because your bill didn't say the 25th. Most of them said the 27th.
right.
But I know
So
of
that
2
just happened to 2 people then?
And it was like a landlord that gets multiple bills. I don't know if yours said the
I didn't
25th.
even open them yet. I'm scared.
Yours might say the 25th. Don't come down on the 25th.
I don't want to ruin a good day. I'd like to wish everybody Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and appreciate the people that worked on the loan. Got it closed up.
Same here, I forgot about the Merry Christmas.
And Mary, there was no other problems with the billing, that's coming along good then?
It's getting better.
It's on the
You
mend.
say that with a smile,
I
Mary.
do. It's improving.
Okay.
I believe I saw in your notes that WPPI has some solar farms, or they're dealing with solar energy in the Midwest, or?
Yeah, they have solar programs. I've worked with them on a couple different options to see if it would work. You know, they run different pilot programs for what they call community solar. Numbers don't, you know, it all depends on how you want to pay for it, you know, and how, if you socialize it across everybody, then it makes a little more sense. If you try to encourage people to buy in as like solar credits or some kind of green credits, the numbers don't really make sense. So, you know, it all depends on how you want to try and package a project. They're struggling with it a little bit, especially in smaller communities. So that's where we are.
We do have one solar provider in the community. Does that include, is that part of our renewable credits at all? Does that help us? And I see that the Norway Area Planning Commission punted on the medical marijuana. Does that mean the council's going to have to address this?
Well, the council, according to, you can ask Grant this question, I guess, but when we reviewed it, it looked like through the legislation that the council, the legislative bodies are required to actually direct the planning commission on what they want, the direction we want to go. Which makes sense, because it's really the planning commission, they looked at it and said, well, you know, we don't know what the community wants to do. It really should be brought to the council, to the legislative body. The legislative body wants to decide how they want to handle, you know, that legislation.
What are your plans to put some stuff in the packet for next meeting?
Well, I can put it in for next meeting, and then the council's gonna have to think how they want to decide on which way to move
Some
forward.
options?
You know, I'm gonna tell you right now, and I don't mind saying this publicly, that I think that it is a public discussion. You know, you're gonna have both sides of the equation, and, you know, you're gonna have philosophical issues or questions, both sides, and I think that the community should weigh in on it, and I think the council will be good to let the community weigh in on it. The legislation has to be explained, so that's our job, to help explain that. You know, we looked at it, it's actually, they did a nice job on putting it together. It's just a matter of which direction the community wants to go.
So what is your plan then, putting something in our packet with options and then getting us, the word out there on the street and have a,
Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit
Public?
of more, it's gonna take a little bit of time, because you
Okay.
wanna have like a public hearing
yeah,
type setup. So what we can do, is there's 3 weeks between now, of course, we have Christmas holiday.
Yeah, and you
But-
don't want to rush into that.
No,
I think
you don't wanna
No,
rush.
I don't
I
think
think-
so. I don't think we need to.
But I can get
Yeah.
some,
Quickly
start getting
at all.
some information for you.
Yeah, just some
Yeah.
So you can
information.
start seeing how the process might work, you know, this spring.
Yes.
You entertain it, I mean,
something to look at.
sure.
Mr. Carlson, any comments?
Just wish everybody happy New Year and a Merry Christmas, and please be safe out there.
Any comments over there? Mr. Anderson?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We're now going into closed session, it's my understanding. It's on the agenda. Do we need this closed session tonight?
That's up to council. We were gonna have a follow-up,
Yep.
I believe.
I make a motion, we go into closed session.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
There will be no business conducted after the closed session.
Yeah, and we gotta get back.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.